All right, so I'm back with the 2JZ GE non-VVTi bottom end. All day I've been tinkering and kind of debating whether I'm gonna fully disassemble the short block. I decided not to. I'm just go ahead and put the oil pump, water pump, all that stuff on it. Some things I've noticed is I did get the correct oil pump, one with the crank sensor. The non-VVTi crank gear, I don't have a VVTi one handy, but I will have to pull it off of my other one. So when you start reading the crank sensor, this thing doesn't have teeth all the way around it. So with that being said, the non-VVTi crank gear, and this is just me, I'm assuming that I have to add in to make it the newer stuff to have the crank signals here. So I have to have this crank gear off of the VVTi to read, because the crank sensor won't read this just straight gear. It's got to have teeth for this thing to read that crank signal. So if you're going to do the VVTi to non-VVTi bottom end, VVTi head, non-VVTi bottom end, you have to add in that and the correct crank gear. And I'm just now figuring this out. For some reason, I knew that I had to do the crank signal, but I wasn't thinking about what it had to actually read. So I have to come up with this too. But I did go ahead and put the water pump on. I don't have a thermostat. I've got to come up with that O-ring. I got to have an O-ring for this piece right here, the water neck that circled around. There's a O-ring in there that I don't have, and a couple of miscellaneous things. So this is what you got so far. New water pump, new oil pump. I got to do that. I have to order both. I've got some O-rings to go by, but that one's not quite big enough. It's not big enough for up there, and it's not big enough for that one down here. Yeah, so that's where I'm at with it. I may end up having to pull the other motor first and rob some of the parts off of it, like the crank gear, and if the upper oil pan didn't bust. So I have, that one's been tapped for a turbo on the IS300, but if it didn't break, that cross member piece broke on the one that was originally in there. But I don't have to drill and tap. I can just take the one off of that, just clean everything and put it on here. Still got to do the rear seal, but instead of having to drill and tap everything for the oil drain or whatever off the turbo, I have it literally already drilled and tapped on that. So I can rob that one. I rob the cam or the crank gear off of it. And if there's any other, because I do have to swap the mounts over and some other things, so I have to get it out to get some of the parts off of it. You know, obviously the turbo and all that stuff has to be changed over, but I will have to drill and tap this bottom, or well, it's the upper oil pan. I have to drill and tap it if that one's not any good. So I may only go so far with this one. I could possibly put the head on it. Once I get the head back from the machine shop, I can roll it over and put the head on it. Then I can actually set it down off of the stand, or lift it up with a cherry picker and change the rear seal before I do the lower pan. I may do that. Put the head on it, roll this thing over, set it off, because on the head it's got the lifting points, so I can roll it over, put the head on it, put the lifting points on it, lift it up, do the rear seal, get it off, new one on, then I'll be ready for the actual oil pan. And then once I get that one apart and disassembled, I can actually rob some of the accessories and all that stuff and move it all over. I won't have to drill and tap another one. So that's what I'm working on. I went to drive this IS300 today, but it actually, the battery's dead on it. I gotta get it registered because I'm gonna end up driving it and it's not registered. I don't have insurance on it. So I gotta get that straightened out because that's a good little car. It runs and drives great. I've drove it some. I've drove it around the block. And usually when you lower a car, you can tell driving a car that you've lowered the crap out of it or whatever. This car, it drives like a factory car. It's surprising. It's not super low, but it's pretty low. It's a lot lower, maybe lower than this one. I'm not really sure, but it's a lot lower than my son's car, but we had to raise it back up for the angle kit. But anyway, it is lowered and it does handle extremely well, which I think it's just some cheap eBay coilovers or something on it. I don't really know, but it drives really good. So I'm gonna say this, I probably said it before, but I may try to work on my BMW some and drive that for a minute. It seems like a pretty good little car, but I need to drive it some first to make sure it doesn't have any issues or whatever, because I don't want to take my BMW apart and be forced to drive that and have a problem down the road. So I need to at least drive it some and make sure it's, doesn't have any problems or whatever. The radio stopped working for some reason, I don't know why. But yeah, that's what my mind's going everywhere today. We got this thing going. I cleaned the shop up a little bit more, moved that motor, got rid of the totes, put them back in the back. I've got a mess around me here, all this stuff, but that's where I'm changing over parts. I got a whole new water pump, but the way I took it off, I actually separated the water pump. But now I know you can actually pull the bolt off the back here and just pull the big bolts, not the 10, and this whole piece will come off. Pump, hose, and everything will come off if you just take the 12s out. So, but I got it back in. I've got the 10s piled up here for the covers, and I got some 12s for the tensioner. It didn't have the crank sensor, so I'll have to get a 10 for that. And I've got the cover bolts. The cover was damaged. It was actually, it's up there somewhere, but the cover's in pretty bad shape, so I did find another cover somewhere. I don't know where I laid it, but I did find another cover, so I got a good cover. The lower half, I don't know what I'm gonna do on the upper half. I've been looking at some aftermarket stuff, some billet ones and all that kind of thing. I don't really need to do all that with this car, really. I just want it to not blow up, and I'm risking it with this, not rebuilding this non-VVTi bottom end. Hey, YOLO, I guess. Put it together and send it, I guess. You always hear people send it. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna send it. Did more than I thought I was gonna do, actually taking everything apart and cleaning and doing oil pumps, water pumps. In my mind, I was just gonna yank the head off, but I got into it and I had the parts, so, which I'll have to rebuy the Toyota oil pump and water pump again for the motor that's at the machine shop. I've never put a 2JZ together ever. I've took one apart and I did some drilling and tapping on some parts and all that, but I've never got one this far down and put it together. And the only thing that's going to be different is the assembly of the bottom end, the internals, rotating assembly. Other than that, I'll have to do all this stuff on that other motor again. So I'm at least getting a head start, trying to figure that out. But that's what I got going right now. So yeah, I may call it a day here soon. It's getting kind of later. It's not dark yet, but I like some groceries and I'm hungry. But all right, here we go. I talked to Mike at Mad Mike's Tuning and at Mad Mike's Tuning. Mike is going to tune it on the 29th, which is next Thursday. Yeah, so next Thursday, I've got this thing scheduled to be tuned. I do have to change the plugs, but That's that jewel. Getting closer all the time. On the IS300, I dropped the spindle off at my son's work. They're supposed to be trying to get the one broke bolt, trying to get it out. And I've got the kit, hardware kit for that. So with this hardware kit, it's got extra bolts and stuff, and it had another dowel in it. So I've got the dowel we needed, and there's some new bolts. So with that little kit, should be able to get the angle kit back on if we can get the spindle squared away. If not, I'm gonna have to, Charles, the guy in the primer looking red IS300, we drift with that guy. He's got a spindle. He's gonna try to get off for us, and we may just go buy that from him if we can't get the bolts out of the one at my son's work. So we're on hold right now. That's why I'm tinkering with this motor. I talked to Art this morning. Art's actually starting to pull my B series out to put in my blue hatch out here. I've got to do some things to it to get it ready for that. So we may grab the rollback. It's supposed to rain a bunch here this week. We may grab the rollback, move that thing around. We may wash it and just push it around a little bit and open the hood and kind of take count of what all we've got to fix. There is a kink in the fuel line, pretty bad too. Art couldn't make over 300 horse at the dyno last time he took it, and so I'm thinking that's the contributing factor. He's got like, I think 1,000 cc injectors in it. That thing should have made a ton more than that. Once we get it back, we'll start maybe trying to tinker with that thing, and in the meantime, maybe play with the IS300. If we can get Dominic's car done and get it out of the way and move the S14 back over here, I can let the IS300 down and start on it, because I'm gonna have to need some of the parts off of that motor for this setup. Yeah, it's gonna be a pain to get it all without pulling that motor. I'm gonna have to buy things or come up with parts to go on this. If not, I can just, pull this motor and I can start changing things over. And then once I'm done, I can actually put it right back in the car. That's where I'm at with that. And I'm actually gonna sit down and get me a parts list for the things that I am missing. I'm gonna have some O-rings. I'm gonna have to have the crank sensor. I am gonna go ahead and buy a new one. I could use that one, but I'm gonna go ahead and buy a new one. So that's one less thing that I have to deal with later, because I will have another motor, and if this one's good, I'll just put it on the newer motor that we're rebuilding. Yeah, so that's where we're at. That's what we're working toward. So yeah, hey guys, thanks for watching. All right, here we go. And I'm gonna go ahead and apologize for the glare all over everything. I just now realized that my camera has a crack in I'm using my cell phone, and it's got a crack in one of the lenses. So I actually just sat here just now and started going through it. It's all the footage I've got for now. I'm just gonna go ahead and post it. It is what it is. I've got a new lens ordered, but I'll just use my regular camera for now until that comes in. This one's just more convenient to grab. I've got it in my pocket, shoot my little video and lay it down, versus having to hunt tripods and all the different accessories and all that stuff for the other camera. But I'll have to do that for now, at least until I can get this thing fixed. Just explaining the glare on it. I do have a crack on one of my lenses. So, all right, here we go.
I'm feeling high. I'm feeling